Hi, guys, and welcome back to the Female Fitness Podcast. I'm your host, Danny, and in today's podcast, I'm going to talk about some of the ways in which having a poor relationship with food or your body can show up in your life, and the ways in which it can really hold you back and impact your life. And the reason for this is that working on your body image, first of all, and your relationship with food can be a really challenging process and it can be very confronting as well. And so, therefore, it's understandable why we want to avoid doing that work, why we want to pull back from it. And it can be very hard to stick it out at times unless you give it real meaning on a practical level and unless you understand really why you're doing what you're doing. So that's partially why in this podcast, I want to cover some of the ways in which having a poor relationship with food and a poor relationship with your body can really negatively impact your life. And another reason why I want to touch on this is that a lot of the time when people are struggling with their relationship with food or their body, they might not realize that that is what the issue is. Sometimes they might think that the issue is their body composition and they might think that they need to lose body fat or gain muscle tissue. Sometimes they might think that the issue is something else. And this podcast will hopefully help you if you're struggling yourself with your body image or relationship with food, recognize that and recognize that this is the work that needs to be done. And it also will hopefully help you identify these things with your clients if it's something that they're struggling with and help them give their process more meaning and help them push through the difficult times. So, whether you are someone who is on your own health and fitness journey and you want to work to improve your body image and relationship with food, or you might have that realization that you need to throughout this podcast, or whether you're someone who is a coach working with clients, this podcast will be relevant for you. So don't switch off if you're not a coach. This podcast is going to be really helpful for absolutely everybody. So, like I said, I think I want you to think and remind yourself as you're listening to this podcast about anything that applies to you that comes up, any sort of little warning signs that maybe you need to work on your relationship with food, or maybe you need to work on your body image. And I also want you to take note of any ways in which it might really change your life to work on those things on a practical level. And this is going to be very specific to you as an individual and what you really value in your life and what you want your life to look like. So, to start with, when we struggle with our relationship with food and our bodies, we often find a lot of worry about social occasions. Sometimes that can be more intense feelings like feeling anxious. Sometimes it can be feeling extremely stressed or heightened in the run up to social occasions. And sometimes it can go as far as us completely withdrawing from them and avoiding them altogether because we feel so stressed and so worried about them. So if you're someone who really struggles with social occasions. You feel a lot of fear over the lack of control around food whilst you're there, over the conversations that might be present, over the judgment from others over your food choices or what you look like. If you struggle to even show up in the first place because you're so worried about your external appearance, these are all signs that you have a little bit of work to do on your relationship with food and or your body image. And the reason I say and or as well is partially because when we struggle with either our relationship with food or our bodies, we struggle with the other to some extent, maybe not to the same extent, but usually there's a little bit of work to be done on both areas, and that's something that it's really important to recognize. So social occasions are a big sort of warning sign, And then on the flip side of that, what I want you to think about, if that is something that you struggle with, showing up for social occasions, being able to be confident in that, not worrying, not having your thoughts completely consumed by what you look like or the food that's going to be present, how would that actually change your life? Like, how would that change your experience of it? Would that change, for example, your ability to connect with other people? Would that change your life trajectory because it would open up opportunities to meet people? And you never know what those connections are going to lead to. Like, often you might have heard of the phrase, it's not what you know, it's who you know. Sometimes the connections we have in life can really shape the trajectory of our lives, open up opportunities in our work life, in our personal life, in terms of relationships and dating. So, what is that like lack of ability to attend social occasions or the lack of ability to be present during them? What could that be holding you back from? I want you to really think about that if that's something that you struggle with and think about all of the opportunities that would be present if you were able to show up feeling at ease without your thoughts consumed by those things. And again, that can be a really strong driving force to allow you to push through the more difficult times when you're going through a journey of working towards self-improvement or working on your health, which can be really challenging and comes with its ups and downs. You know, it is a bit of a roller coaster at times. Um, and then even outside of social occasions, that same point applies. So what else would it allow you to do or experience? Would you be more likely to put yourself forward for jobs, for example? Would you be more able to turn up to interviews as your very best self? Is there any sort of like other occasions that you're avoiding? Is there any other places where you struggle to show up or people that you struggle to show up with? Try and have a think about that. And again, how would that impact your life if you were able to show up for those things and actually be present during that? Think about what opportunities your poor relationship with food and or your body is actually robbing from you, and deep that. Because often when clients do first come to me, they do find it really hard to maintain or build connections with like friends, family, loved ones. And, you know, social occasions and being able to show up is a really big part of that. And then even beyond those occasions that we've spoken about, it can be really difficult to show up for, build, and maintain connections anyway, because when we struggle with our relationship with ourselves, our body, and food, we're less likely to put ourselves out there to reach out and ask friends if they want to meet up or ask someone that we're attracted to if they want to do something or if they want to go on a date or start a conversation. We're just so much less likely to put ourselves out there. And it's worth thinking actually, like, what are we missing out on by being robbed of that? It also just stops the development of those relationships because when we're actually conversing with people, similarly to how I spoke about with social occasions, often our thoughts are so messy and chaotic and caught up in worrying about what we look like or worrying about the food that's present or counting down the hours until our next meal. And again, that can really prevent us from engaging in conversation properly and really benefiting from it in the way in which we could, and therefore hinders those connections in that way. It also, you know, may result in when we have a poor relationship with food or our bodies, we often engage in a lot of like um food related kind of thought processes, but we also tend to find that like our relationship with exercise can take a hit and we can end up over exercising, whether that be in your general activity throughout the day or whether that be with training, like formal training or cardio. And again, that takes time away from the time that we could be spending with our loved ones. And so it can hinder our ability to develop connections in that way as well, because we're so much more time poor, as well as our thoughts being so chaotic, us being less likely to put ourselves out there. And often we are, when we struggle with these things, we're more irritable, our energy levels are lower, and all of those things can obviously impair our connections in our lives as well. Another thing that actually, people maybe don't talk about so often is when you struggle with these things, you often find that your sex drive is reduced as well. And that can be for multiple different reasons. One of which is, like I said, less likely to put yourself out there, you feel less confident and comfortable in your own skin. And so you're less likely to feel able to open up and be vulnerable in that way and to have that desire to be intimate in like a sexual environment. And it can be really difficult to relax when you're so caught up in your own thoughts, which is obviously something that's really important when it comes to that kind of thing, our intimate relationships. And then even beyond that, when we struggle with our relationship with exercise, food, and our bodies, we often, like I've spoke about before, experience the loss of our menstrual cycle or irregular cycles, and that is often accompanied by low estrogen or impaired overall reproductive health. Um, and that can come along with on a physiological level, not just a psychological level, a lower libido, so our sex drive being reduced. So these are all things which can massively impact your life, and it kind of goes beyond even just the psychological, and it goes onto a physiological level as well. Um, so really think about like on a day-to-day basis, like how would your day-to-day change if you addressed all of these things, if you worked on your relationship with food and your body image so that you were able to show up, so that you were able to be present, so you were able to produce your best work, your energy levels increased, your sex drive increased. How would your life look different on a day-to-day basis? And if you were to really lean into the discomfort of doing the work that you really need. And then beyond that, how would your weeks look different? How would your months look different? And what could change in the space of a year? Because if you really do the work on this kind of thing and you get yourself into a good position, your entire life trajectory could change in the space of a year. And if you recognize that, that can sometimes be enough of a kind of reason to drop into doing the work and to embrace that challenge. And then as you go through the process of working on your body image and relationship with food, and you see those benefits play out on a day-to-day basis, on a weekly basis, monthly, yearly basis, that you having taken action and seeing that that action pays off will give you even more of a reason to continue that process, because it's like you'll see one little change. You might find you're able to be more present during a family meal. You're not worrying about the food that's present. Instead, you're able to engage in the conversation. And then you're like, wow, that experience was amazing. I enjoyed that social occasion so much more. I got so much more out of it. I was able to relax, saw so much more stress reduction. I was able to nurture that connection with those people that I was with. And that, wow, that was amazing. That was worth it. And then you might see another little thing change, like actually your sex drive comes back. And then you're like, oh, wow, like, I actually forgot what this felt like. And that feels amazing. And that gives you an extra little bit of a driving force to continue the work, even when it feels difficult. Because often I think when you've struggled with your relationship with food and your body image for a really long time, which is very common for people who do struggle, it can be easy to sort of like forget how good these things can feel. And it can be easy to have started to accept where you are and accept that as like your normal, when in reality it's not normal. But the beautiful thing about that is then when you do start to see this work pay off and you do experience life so differently and so much more vibrantly, it feels so incredible that is like so powerful for your ability to keep doing the work because it feels so amazing and you're like, wow, I really forgot what this felt like. But it's important to recognize that you might have come to accept a sort of new normal that is not normal because otherwise you might not have as much of a drive to do the work because you've forgotten how amazing it feels to actually be healthy psychologically and physiologically. So I think that's something really important to recognize. But there are so many ways that having a poor relationship with food and your body and exercise can impact your life. And I really want you to reflect on that and deep that. Another thing it can impact is actually our training performance and our ability to make progress with whatever fitness goals we have, whether that be to progress with our endurance, whether it be to progress with our strength, whether it be even body composition related goals, when it comes to the ability to succeed with changing our body composition over the long term, having an impaired relationship with your food or your body is going to get in the way of that at some point. It might not in the first 8 weeks if you do like an 8 week fat loss phase, but then beyond that, it will. If you don't address these things, it will come back to bite you in the ass at some point, and it will stop you from making the long-term change that you want to make in some way or another. And it's really, really important to recognize that. And sometimes, again, you might resonate with like one of these factors so much more than the others, and that's absolutely okay. And what I'd recommend if that is the case is kind of like really doubling down on that factor that's really important to you as an individual based on your values and like what you care about. And then starting this process using that as a driving force, and then you'll see benefits in so many other areas as well as that. So it's like an additional benefit. But yeah, when it comes to our training goals, obviously, if we have a poor relationship with our bodies to start with, we're going to be less likely again to be able to show up as our best selves in the gym. We're going to be less likely to put ourselves out there to really exert ourselves, to be able to apply ourselves to training. If we have a poor relationship with food, we're going to be more likely to engage in behaviors like underfueling or having really large fluctuations in our intake, which is never going to help our bodies perform to the best of their abilities. If we want to perform really well, we need to consistently provide our bodies with the fuel that they need to perform really well, not see these massive fluctuations in our intake. And obviously, restriction, if you're someone who falls into that category of struggling with restriction, that in itself is going to impair you from providing your body with the fuel that it needs at some point, or potentially even engaging in excessive overeating in the future because restriction can sometimes lead to that when it's done chronically or on an extreme level. So that's a couple of examples of how your relationship with food can get in the way of performance goals or body composition related goals if that's something that matters to you as an individual, which is it's absolutely okay if that's the case. So yeah, even in the, fitness realm, these things are going to get in the way of your goals. And I think it's really important to recognize that. And if you're struggling to identify how any of these things might be showing up, like in this moment in time, because sometimes that can be quite difficult, it might be helpful to reflect on the last month, for example, the last several months, and then the last year, and think about, okay, were there actually any opportunities that I had there that my poor relationship with food or my body could have gotten in the way of? Were there any goals that I wanted to achieve that those things could have gotten in the way of? Even like work goals. Did it get in the way of you getting a promotion? Did it get in the way of you showing up as the best version of yourself within your business? Did it get in the way of you like furthering your education because your thoughts were so chaotic and your energy was so limited and your concentration was affected? Could it have, even if you maybe don't quite recognize that just yet? Try and have a think about all of those things. So, hopefully, this podcast has given you a little bit of food for thought on how life-changing it could be to do the work on your relationship with food and or your body. And hopefully, it gives you a reason to kickstart that process If you have any questions in response to this, please don't hesitate to reach out. I absolutely love hearing from you guys, so you're welcome to drop me a DM. If you have any questions, requests, feedback, there's any topics you want me to cover in future episodes or questions you have, please let me know because it would be a dream to hear from you. And thank you so much for listening. As always, I'll put all of my links in the description below for anyone who wants to sign up to my email list, or anyone who's interested in coaching. I am very much nearing capacity at the moment. So if you are on the fence about it, get in touch and we can have a chat and go from there. Have a wonderful rest of your day, guys, and I'll see you next week.